Good evening and welcome to the school committee of February 13, 2019. I'd like to remind everyone this meeting is being broadcast live. It is also being recorded for use at another date if needed. So thank you all for coming, but keep that in mind. And I'd ask you to entertain me and please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Would you also join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to table the minutes of February 6th for the next meeting. I'm going to shut my phone off. I'd entertain a motion to accept the field trip. The French class is going on October 25th to October 27th to Quebec City for an authentic French experience. About 46 students, 6 to 7 adults. Other chaperones are going to be determined as students are enrolling. As you know, parents come forward. They're going to be needing a school nurse, and I believe one is actually going with them. Is that true, Michelle?
They'll book somebody. One of the high school nurses.
Okay. And entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Fred?
So will we need, in addition to how many teachers that are going, what will we need for substitute coverage, and will we need to have a substitute for the nurse?
Well, as of right now, it depends on what students are going, because it'll be parental chaperones if you look at it. I'm not quite sure how many people are going as
We're looking at
teachers.
two teachers, the two French teachers.
And hopefully the float nurse will cover.
Correct. So the float nurse is already on staff, so we wouldn't need a sub coverage for that. But the two teachers, the French teacher only teaches French, so I assume only his students will be going. So the majority of that, but we will have to hire a substitute for that trip anyway. At least one.
Any other question? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, as we said last week at our regular school committee meeting, we were going to take up budget discussions and talk about differences in what went up and where it went up and how it went up.
So thanks, Mr. Hayes. I just wanted to let the committee know that I met with all the department heads in Whitman on Monday. Frank Lynham invited myself. Christine Succo was there. Ernie Sandlin was there representing the district. Different things were discussed at that meeting involving the Whitman budget. Letting this committee know that Frank has met with all of the union reps in Whitman, except one, and I don't know which union. He didn't say which one he did not meet with, about taking a 0% or a wage freeze for 2 years. And I know he had a conversation with WHEA about that. That was something that didn't come through me, and I wasn't able to present to this committee last Wednesday. Frank met with Beth last Thursday. So it's just something that is out there already with our teachers. We haven't had a conversation at all about taking any type of wage freeze. We haven't had a conversation about anything around our contract yet, as we don't have any numbers from either town. I know there's been some discussions. I've talked to Frank a little bit. I've talked to Mike McHugh a little bit, but we haven't had any discussions with our association about any type of wage freeze. But that was discussed with police, fire, DPW, all the associations in the town of Whitman. So I just wanted the committee to know that before we get into this, that discussion is already out there, and I already have some teachers that are concerned about a freeze for 2 years. As passed out was the request to see a line item by line item adjustment from 18, 19, and 20 you have in front of you. We can look at it, and I'm here to answer questions about things that went up. If you look at it overall, we're about a 3.6% increase in facilities, in insurances, in salary, steps and lanes, and all of that. We're at about a 2% increase in special education. So the bottom line at the end stays the same, but just as far as percentages, if you look at it, 3.5% in our insurance costs, our retirement costs, our steps and lanes, our COLA raises. Those things are about 3.6%, and our sped budget is up 2%. And if you looked at those numbers last week, it's close to $1 million. So I'd be happy to go through and answer questions that we have, that you might have about the increases from 19 to 20.
Yeah, why don't we go right down it?
Sure. So on your first page, first quarter of the page is Indian Head. Principal supplies, it remains the same. Principal's travel, there is none. Elementary salaries are up 3%. That's, yes?
Just curious, because if we go back to our FY19 requested budget, at the very beginning, before we started trimming, we were requesting an Indian Head for teacher salaries, $2,275,884. And if we look at the adjusted figure on this sheet, it's $2,298,846. I'm just wondering, you know, we have, obviously, there's some numbers that have changed, and then once you get to a certain line item, 10,140.
Fred, what was your first number?
Yeah, what was it for?
The requested for $2,275,884. And adjusted was $2,298,846.
So those adjustments were made just recently in January of 19. So this is our actual 19 where we are right now?
Yep.
So what was the question?
So we're spending more than what we requested from?
Yes. In Indian Head teachers, because of I believe last year when you looked at the contract, we hadn't had a signed unit aid contract. I'm not sure. So
It
that
wasn't
was-
signed, there was money held in reserve, but maybe that wouldn't have made it to the line item, I don't.
Right. I'm not sure.
Christine maybe could answer that if,
This is the adjusted budget after the transfer that we made in January, which included moving the money from the contingency line for the collective bargaining agreements.
Okay.
So it was moved after the original proposed budget.
Christine,
What's the
please move
difference
the
in
mic a
sound?
little closer, because sometimes people can't hear us. Thank you.
So what you're looking at, Fred, is not the original proposed budget, but the one after I made the transfer in January,
okay.
okay?
Robbie?
I was just
I was just
trying
going to
to,
ask, what is it, $20,000 difference, Fred?
well, but 20,000 here, 20,000 there,
Because I don't have the numbers you have in front of you, that's why I'm
That was the
asking.
reason.
times, well, they're right from last year's.
Yeah, which one?
But you add it up from all the schools, and now you're talking 100, 150,000, things add up.
I'm not debating, I'm just asking what you have.
Yeah, so that's
Because you're
where
the only one that
these,
has that in front.
that's where this came from. I just printed it out from the budget proposal from last year.
The budget proposal.
Yeah, the original
Proposal.
requested amount, which I would have assumed if anything went down, not up. But I can understand what,
Why would you assume it went down?
Go down, yeah.
because we trimmed from the original proposal. The original proposal last year, for what our asking budget was higher than what we assessed. We originally, what, 2.2 million or 2.3 million higher? And we ended up being at a 1.2, if I remember correctly?
You got me. Anyway,
Like me to continue? So we've got the elementary teacher salaries on down, para salaries went up 200. Again, there's an increase in instructional materials. General supply went up, photocopy stayed the same. We did increase our subline because we've noticed we're coming up a little bit short, so we've increased $3,000 in each school to make sure that we don't go over. And substitute clinic supplies, 13, co-curricular activities, I'm sorry, 16, library materials at $25, which is poor for a library. Para salaries, that's our para, who covers the library since we cut the librarian, is up 15. Sped teacher salary is up 36. One of the reasons for that, and to answer that, the previous superintendent reduced a sped teacher by 0.5 When we came in September, we needed full coverage, we were out of compliance. So we added somebody, and that is now in the 2020 budget. It was a .5 position, so we added a .5 position.
I don't know why it was cut to .5. There was nothing that supported a cut to .5. So when that took place in the liaison list and the services that were happening, we had children who were not receiving their special ed services according to their IEP. So we had to reinstitute that back to a 1.0.
Okay.
Sped para, same thing, for support for special education. We had to increase 1.5, and we've done so already. With speech, we were out of compliance with speech, so we've added a 1.5 speech person at Indian Head. That is a two speech folks at Indian Head and a .5 that serves our preschool and our Indian Head person. It's an assistant. It's not a full-time speech person. We try to avoid hiring a third, and the IEPs were written so that speech services could be delivered by an assistant. Again, thanks to Ms. Matheson and being creative to save some money. Moving down to Conley. Teacher salaries, COLA raises and steps and lanes up $35,000.
2%.
Which is 2%. We've gone down for para salaries. We've gone down in supplies and student enrollment. Our elementaries get certain monies for supplies based upon the amount of students they have. Our enrollment is down, so we've cut their budget. General supplies the same. Sub-salary is up, as I mentioned before. Clinic supplies are down. Co-curricular is $30. Library is down. Library paras is up $728. Psych is a salary increase. Steps and lanes for the school psychologist. Sped teacher salary, steps and lanes. I'm down to sped teacher salary, steps and lanes. We had a para cut. We lost a para, so we're down 26 in Conley.
But down, you're talking about your negative,
Correct. It's a deduction.
Exactly.
So we've had some increase and some decreases. It turns out to pretty much a level service piece. Yes.
I was just going to ask real quick, so would that be in a para cut? Would that have been added in, like, as far as moving it to another?
We move it to a different school potentially.
Perfect, okay. All right. Gotcha.
So they moved from Conley to
Yep.
potentially Indian Head to potentially Duval.
Okay, thank you.
And some of the para pieces and the service delivery sometimes changes. For instance, we had a student move in from Iowa the other day, or like a couple weeks ago. He's needed a one-on-one. We have to create a position to go with that. So that's how we move paras around the district. And so you might see somebody change from one school to another. Speech services, up minimally. Duval Elementary teacher salaries. This is up 7%. It looks like quite a bit. It's steps and lanes, it's COLA, but it also includes a halftime music teacher that was included in the district budget last year, that he services all three schools. Again, it was a decision made by the previous superintendent, and we had to make sure it fit into our budget this year. He does the instrumental music at the 3 elementaries. We're down to elementary para salaries. Again, we're down there, 12.5. And elementary materials, 750. And the paras, when you say elementary para salary, those are our kindergarten paras, okay? So they're different than special education paras. Subline is 3,000. Clinic supplies are down 48. Co-curricular is 20. Library instruction materials down 95. Para salaries 439. Psych services at Duval are 4,000 steps and lane. Duval sped teacher up 11,000 steps and lanes. Sped para salary is up. That's an addition. That's where those students tend to drift, and we have to add paras based upon services. Duval speech salary. So the Duval school has one full-time speech person, one part-time speech person. They share that speech person with Hanson Middle School. Okay, so Hanson has a 1.5 and Duval has a 1.5. So you're going to see an increase in that.
And that's experience from the speech that we had at McQuon last year, so we had to reorganize that when we moved the different programs.
Okay.
Whitman Middle salaries, steps and lanes, COLA. Sub salary is 4,000. We increased it because there are more teachers at Whitman Middle School. than there are at the elementary schools. So you'll see that at Hanson Middle and at the high school. Co-curricular is up $105. The guidance salary is down because the guidance counselor ended up being the assistant principal at Indian Head, and we hired somebody cheaper. So it's down. The adjustment counselor salary is tweaked, $1,500, steps and lanes. The library salary, you can explain that one.
Well, the library salary was changed due to a grant structure. The grant structure of some of our federal grants, we used to have a person at another elementary school who was, we paid a portion of that salary from there. However, with the restructuring of the federal mandated grant program, we needed to take that salary additionally from a place where a school was receiving that service, and that was Whitman Middle. So there's no change, except you'll see a reduction at one school and the regular piece at the other school, because that other school does not receive Title IIA grant funds.
We're at the...
Psych salary.
Psych salary is up $1,500. Sped teacher salary is up 10, steps and lanes. Sped para is up, steps and lanes. Hanson Middle School teacher salary is up 80, steps and lanes, and just different people had shifted over to Hanson Middle School.
That is the place where it's reflected in what I just talked about. So you had a person who, last year, you took a portion of their salary when they were at Indian Head, they moved to Hanson Middle, they no longer qualified for that salary piece from the grant that we covered, so that's the additional piece from there.
Gotcha.
Hanson Middle School instructional supplies is up 27, general supplies up 22, sub-salaries up 4,000, clinic salaries 176, co-curriculars 160, guidance salary is 15, steps and lanes, adjustment counselor salary is up steps and lanes, library salary is just up, it's a real librarian, it's not a paraprofessional. Steps and lanes.
Certified media technology person. Middle schools and high schools still have that.
Psych is down we had hired somebody in fiscal early 19, different person, different salary, so we're down 8,000 on that. Hanson Middle School special education salary is up 183. Those are 3 people that shifted to the 5th grade, 2 special education folks, and that's the new person in the language-based program. That's the addition in special ed that we spoke about to try to keep some of our students from out of district. That's where the district program is going to be, and that's the special educator. So it's two folks that moved, special education folks from the previous 18 budget to Hanson Middle School, that the transfer just went through, but we had to budget for those 2 folks. They're special ed 5th grade at HMS, and that third person is not hired yet, but that's for that new program.
And the previous administration, that's one of the reasons why we chose that transfer date that we did with the transfers, not the proposed budget, because we weren't sure, and the previous administration wasn't sure when we got in, if those 2 people who service 5th grade were going to remain at Indian Head because they also had some K-4 responsibility, or go to Hanson Middle School as a 5th grade. So then we transferred a reading specialist and a special educator. So that accounts for the date and why it was in after the transfer that they moved.
Para salaries up 66. Sped speech, as I mentioned, that split. It looks a little cheaper than the Duval piece, but that's just the way it worked out. It's 1.5, 1.5. High school didn't increase principal supplies, expenses, principal's travel. High school teacher salary, steps and lanes for the entire staff. Nothing, we remain the same in instructional materials. And just being the former high school principal, I'll just tell you, $11,000 for instructional materials for a student body of 1,200 is poor, okay? And that has, look where that has gone from 18. So we're $11,000 for materials here is challenging. General supplies, 42. When I got here, that was over 60. So that's been cut for general supplies. And this is just a little histrionics because that was my role. Our 21st century person is there. The salary has gone down. Other expenses, that line item has remained the same. That line item, just the big ticket in that is the community evening school salaries of the directors, and that also includes our online ingenuity, online experience. And that eats up the bulk of that money. At some point, I'd like to move those upstairs into the district-wide account, and it's not necessarily targeted at the high school because they're district-wide programs. High school graduation is up. As you know, you've seen our graduation, it's expensive. It's up $7,000 because we usually go over budget. High school equipment is the same. Photocopies the same. Sub-salaries 3 because that line item is the largest in the district. Athletic salaries, steps, lanes for coaches. Supplies is up $700. No change in travel, no change in equipment, no change in clinic supplies. For our clinic, co-curriculars up, steps, it's just contractual. Guidance salary, that number might change. We have a teacher or a guidance counselor that's out on maternity. If she returns, that 2027 will need to stay there. If she does not, that disappears because the long-term sub will stay in place. Guidance supplies, minimal. Library salary is, we've reduced that other salary. We used to have a para here, or a part-timer here. We have no one there anymore. Library supplies is stagnant at 3. Library salary is steps and lanes. Sped teacher salary, that line will also, so if you look, this is at 18, actual was close to 500. With Ms. Matheson being an interim and hiring an interim high school person and a long-term sub, our net this year is lower, but if Ms. Matheson stays upstairs and Ms. Schneewenweiss stays downstairs, we're going to have to hire a certified, or a Unit A teacher, and we're guessing that's going to be about $50,000, give or take, okay? So that's there. Para salary is up, just steps, and as we go down, you can see there's no change in the school committee budgets at all. The superintendent's salary, you can see there was a reduction. I didn't take a pay cut, but the former superintendent was here for 2.5 months, and we worked together. So you'll see the FY19 is adjusted, so it's adjusted $32,000. That was Ruth's salary for those 2 months, or 3 months that she was here. Clerical's up a little bit. As we move down, no change in those other line items. Assistant superintendent salaries up, just a COLA. Assistant superintendent clerical COLA. Nothing in finances. Business financial salary. David Leary is up an extra day, Christine, or an extra half day? Half day for the year, so that's up $20,000. That was something that Ruth agreed to last year. Clerical salary is up. Just COLAs for our folks upstairs. Nothing really in supplies, 500, 600. Legal, we went close to going over, so we added 10,000 in legal. We haven't used that much this year, but last year, as the committee knows, we used legal quite a bit. Hopefully, that can go back into E&D. Our debt principal is stagnant for next year. There's a reduction in interest of $22,000. The teaching and learning piece that's different in this year's budget, we broke that down to, that's George's assistant superintendent budget, is broken down to each school, so it just doesn't seem like a big chunk out of the district. It's broken down to each individual school to the tune of $42,528.
And we left that highlighted for you because on the handout we gave you last week, there were 4 sets of lines that every school had the same. So we figured if we, in this version, we gave it to you broken out, but also to the side, so you could know that that's what matched it from last Wednesday's handout.
Course reimbursements up $5,000 by contract. District-wide principal salaries are up 3%, or to the tune of $50,000. Principal clerical, district-wide clerical salaries are up. Steps, lanes, or COLAs for that, depending on where they're 10-month or if they're full year. The curriculum coordinators we broke up to $29,000 each school, and as I mentioned, that's a breakup in the Unit B contract anyway. So we're hoping to reshift those funds to an elementary curriculum person and utilizing the other funds for teacher leaders and for counselors within the district. So breaking up those funds. But for the purpose of this had to be budgeted this way. because we had that in the Unit B contract, and this is how they're being paid right now. The elementary tutor salary went away because our tutor became a teacher.
It's ELO.
Or, excuse me, ELL. The tutor became a teacher, and we really should have 2.5 to 3 ELL teachers. We're surviving with 2. Supplies for ELL we put in because we have a burgeoning ELL population, so we put in $10,000 for that. Pre-K salaries are $81,000, and that looks like we added. More students are on IEPs in preschool, so parents are not paying. So we have a revolving fund in pre-K, since parents don't have to pay for elementary or for pre-K if their students qualify for an IEP. We have to cover the cost of that, so we lose in revolving, and we have to put this $81,000 into pre-K salaries. Same services, but a different way to account for that. Para salaries, $741 up. Cut $200 in instructional materials and general supplies in pre-K. Everything else is stagnant. $5,000 up in sub-salaries district-wide. General supply is stagnant. As I go through, I'm learning these terms right now, too. Everything else remains the same from last year. Tuition to other schools is up, or excuse me, is stagnant from last year. Choice is up, and it's up 38.9. We have 5 young folks that are, we talked about it last week, took kindergarten in Rockland last year, to the tune of $5,000, or 5,000 plus special education services. So that's up from last year. That's projected for next year. They'll stay there. Charter schools up, and you can see from, we're anticipating a $765,000, $862 bill, which is up $52,265 from last year. Tech services is up 6. It's for management. Those are the folks COLA raises. Down to tech, professional salaries were up $10,000, just COLAs. Service salaries is $3,400. Contracted services were down almost 42. We're down 5.
We transferred it to
Yeah,
facilities.
we transferred those line items to facilities, excuse me. Same thing with the $5,000, so they're still in the level. We didn't cut them out, we just moved them to a different account. Ernie took those over. The equipment replacement is up 53, and those are your Chromebooks that we agreed to last year. Clinic salaries, and the things in yellow, again, as we put all our clinic folks together, our nurses, our sub-nurse, and our float nurse, and we broke them up to into the 92,994 to each school. You'll see just an increase in the salaries, totaling a little over 14, but it's broken up by school to make it cleaner when we look at it district-wide. Guidance clerk salary, that's our guidance secretary, is up. COLA. The insurance salary reserve, we broke again up into $70,000 to each school, okay? And that is anticipated retirements for next year. Folks have to let us know, or have to let us know by March 1st if they're retiring next year, but the word is out of who has to retire, so we have to make sure that we can cover their retirement buybacks and benefits when they go out. Down below is the retirement and health insurance. The GIC and the Plymouth County is up 77. Medicare tax is up 36 because of wages. Unemployment tax is the same. Employee health insurance is up 5%, we estimate, but that could change and that could lower. There's been different conversations with Mayflower Group. That might be significantly less than 5%, but we need to cover that 5% right now. The district-wide sped, that's Ms. Matheson. You'll see the adjustment from Mr. Riley and his departure. There's a savings there. District-wide sped teachers, those up, they're up 13, but we put these to our elementaries and middle schools. This is our out-of-district coordinator. These are our BCBAs who are not assigned to any specific building. This is our Orton Gillingham person who does reading, specialty reading, all special education services, but they can't be attributed to a certain building. They might float, they might go somewhere, so we broke those up to our elementaries, our middles, and our highs.
Just so you know, the goal of a BCBA is a board-certified behavioral analyst. And that is someone who has a separate skill set other than a regular special ed teacher or a regular teacher themselves to help students with behavioral issues. You have to be board-certified like you would be a nurse, like you would be a school psychologist, so it's an advanced degree. The goal would be to have one per school. We don't have that luxury, so we have 2 of those that travel, and they travel to do our different programs.
And one of the things that I mentioned to the committee around special ed, to try to keep students here, our BCBA, especially if a student's having trouble with behaviors, the BCBA will work with the team to write a plan out for that student so that the student can be successful, so that the next step isn't an out-of-district placement. So the more BCBAs we could have in our district, the better off we would be, because we'd have those services available for them. But we put those in our elementary schools district-wide, so it just didn't seem like a district-wide big nut. SPED tutoring is up $9,500, and that's just when our students are out ill, or we have to provide tutoring services for long-term suspensions or illness. SPED clerical salary, we increased a little bit, and I will say that our SPED clerics upstairs held us together when we had some issues last year in special education and central office. Our non-clerical para is our person that goes and does tutoring in our hospitals when our students are in a hospital school or in a hospital environment. Where am I?
General supplies.
General supplies is up 1,000. SPED travel is up 300. Excuse me, summer materials are up 300. Travel's up 700. Our contracted services, those are folks that we have to OT, PT, whoever we bring in. Again, special education is expensive, and it's dependent upon students' IEPs. These aren't people, these are services that we bring in from North River, from South Shore, from Reeds, whenever we need specialists to do things. SPED legal is remained the same. SPED contracted services is up, or it's our travel, our transportation, as I've mentioned. It's up $74,000, bringing kids to and from out-of-district placements, and the next one is $844,000 in out-of-district placements this year.
How many students is that?
I'd have to look right now, but it's 48, 49. It can fluctuate. We brought one back and we send one out.
No, I mean, the year before, we were up 1,000.
Right. We're up. So that number is when we talk about social emotional pieces, the students that are coming in that need more than the average classroom teacher is growing at a need that is outpacing what a school can do. And that's not here, that's everywhere. So I'm looking at different information from different folks and seeing what their budgets are to make sure that we're not so out of whack. That's why when I talked to the committee about seeing what type of program we can bring in to make sure that we can provide for our students, because that last option is out of district. And when I'm looking at an $800,000 cost, know that out of district placement can go from anywhere between $50,000 to $363,000. Depending on if it's residential or not. We don't want to do residential, obviously. Ms. Matheson actually went out and looked at a residential program the other day and said that's not a good fit for our student. We can do it here. It can be just an out-of-district placement. But that's the piece that we're not giving to them, and I want the committee to know, I want the public to know, the process is such that we call our attorney. Our attorney works for Murphy, Hess, Toomey, and Lehane, and she will advise us, is this something you want to fight with the Board of Special Education Appeals in Boston, or is it something that you want to make sure that you can fit? If we go to the board and we lose, we pay our attorney fees, we pay their attorney fees, and any penalty or anything, and we still send the student out. So those are the things that Lauren and Lisa Forbes do upstairs to make sure that we're not always going. If we feel you have a good case and we go to hearing, all for it. But that's still an attorney fee. So those are the things that we have, and in the 10 years that we've been together, our special education population is growing and growing, And again, we want to do the best for each student in the district. That means maintaining a classroom environment for all kids, and sometimes a student just can't fit that classroom environment, even though we've had a BCBA consult, even though they're seeing our school psych, even though they might be on a half day. Those are the things. So they're rising, and the cost of tuition at the places is rising as well. The circuit breaker piece that we've talked about, it used to be, and I think last year was $44,000. I believe next year, the rate that we can recover after is a $50,000 rate. So the state raised that piece, and we only get 70% of the money, or less than that now, less than that after we spend. So after we spend our coverage, it's like our copay of 50, and then we get 70 or 65, depending on the governor's budget. So that's why our costs are there. So if you look at those two, you look at our transportation and our out-of-district, we're up the million, we're up to 2%.
Now, is that also, if a student came in, say like, if you have 1 or 2 kids that came in January?
Yep.
Happened.
You know, I know it happens all the time, that's.
4 weeks ago, yeah.
It,
It can
like
balloon.
you said, it can
can
go
balloon.
30 to $300,000 in an instant, right?
There is some, what's it called, the home rule or something, that there is some benefit that we can get from the sending district to defray for a little bit of
It depends, because we had that case too. And now we're looking at not just students that come in and move in with a family. If DSS or custody issues come about, we might own those students as well. And we had that almost go to hearing, and we were able to take care of that. But those are the things that come up. Come April, we unanticipated a move-in, and you're providing the service, and the folks move into town, and you're not really sure what their educational needs would be. I will say that we have a very good department, district-wide, who looks at IEPs and makes sure that we service the student to what the IEP reads, and they make sure that we're just not, and I want to say just throwing money out the door, but they want to make sure that the students are being serviced based upon the needs of that student, not giving them more or not giving them less than they need to be successful in the district.
So we really have to work on getting that back in-house.
And one of the things that worked out well for us was that there was a student who moved into one of our schools where we had an existing program, and the student who had moved had been an out-of-district placement in the school district that they were coming from. But we were able to work with the family, we were able to work with that, so that student then now is with us in a setting that we already have.
And to bring into that program that we're putting together at Hanson Middle, that was a negotiation between our attorney and the other student's attorney to make sure we built the program, because they want to stay here, and they don't want to go out. But if that doesn't come to fruition, we can come into some problems.
I know this is a little bit off topic. Hopefully I can have the latitude.
Go ahead.
Early intervention.
Yep.
And I don't know how we fit the dollars in, but by having early intervention, will that in the end up saving us money if we can root out issues early enough?
Well, truthfully, that's the goal, and that's why you saw some of those early speech numbers and the pre-K increases, because what's happening is as people are being eligible for school at 2.9 is when you can become eligible for services at 2.9 years of age. What's starting to happen is that, yes, we are now having a system where students might enter preschool, but you might enter the preschool setting only for an early intervention. Maybe it's only for speech, and you're not yet going to the full day preschool. Or maybe it's a partial day and we can give you those services, so hopefully we can move off. One of the things we're trying to do with restructuring of funds and budgets too is to provide some counseling at earlier ages, is to keep those students in also.
And those are, again, unfunded mandates.
Yes.
Correct. Right. I mean, it's there, we need to do it for our kids, but I think the more we can grab our youngest and provide services, by the time they reach later elementary or middle or even high, those services can be pulled, you know? So yeah, the earlier we can get to our kids and service them, the better off we are.
Just a quick question, just kind of off of what Fred was talking about with early intervention, or even with anything with special education. Is there any insurance reimbursement or anything like that that we're able to go after?
Outside of circuit breaker, no.
Okay.
The goal would be for somebody to make this large insurance policy that we all can pay X amount of dollars in the state. And then sometimes you pay a little more, sometimes you recover a little bit more. But
Because I was just thinking, years ago, speech therapy was something.
You do, there is the Medicaid reimbursement that comes.
Correct.
At times, but that used to be much more significant at the school level. Now it's based on paperwork that the families who need, what do you call it, Medicaid,
Yep.
if they need it, that's how you get a portion of it back.
Okay.
It used to be based on the services that the child would be receiving as a portion of it, but that's changed also.
Okay, thank you.
Bobby, it's almost a one-to-one. It bases itself very similar if they had a policy covering that. It's kind of like unemployment insurance. The employer, your rates, your mods are way down as long as you don't use it.
Right.
When you use it,
Yeah.
you're repaying it. It's just,
Yeah.
it's one-to-one. It's crazy, but it's the way it works.
So moving down a little bit, you're going to see a little adjustment in ESY professional salaries and a decrease in para salaries. They flipped. Instead of a para, they brought in a full-time teacher over the summer.
And ESY is our extended school year program for students on an IEP that need more services into the summer months.
Speech in the pre-K, we've had to add because our influx of special education students in the pre-K, speech is primarily what they're getting, so we've added a .5 at the pre-K. Safety supplies, we've remained the same at 20,000. Details went up. Our police guys are up a little bit. We restructured salaries in district transportation for a savings. Our contracted services is the contract with First Student that we signed last week. McKinney-Vento is up 5,000 just from a change. We were over 1 year, we were lower 1 year, so we decided to stay at 70. That might be up, that might be down. That's our mandated transportation. Facilities overtime is up 1,100 just in case. Maintenance salaries up, COLAs. Where am I? Yes.
Facilities contracted services.
Yes. Inclement weather stayed the same. Contracted services up 3,500. Sign that. Our cleaning, our cleaning is down 14,600. Facility supplies is up 14,200. Other expenses stayed the same. Facilities equipment up 14,500. Repairs are up 26,000. Although we took a building offline, we still have repairs in the other 6. Gas and oil up 2. Electric up 22. Just cost of electric. Where am I? Down below fuel. Fuel is up 36. And you'll see the rubbish, trash removal is consistent. Our insurance, we split between the 6 schools. To the tune of 68.3, which is a $10,000 increase from last year. So there's your bottom line as far as the numbers, the same as we presented last week. And
Questions, anyone? As you can see, I have this question asked occasionally in the last many years. Why do we hire an attorney? Why does the school district have an attorney? Well, as you can see, we get challenged on lots of different things to do with education, and it's nothing. A lot of people think, well, you've got an attorney because you do things wrong, you get sued. That's not true. You have an attorney because there's so many legal loopholes that we get challenged on all the way along the line with education that you can see what it goes. It's a cost.
Prevent us from doing that.
correct, and it's preventative too. So we will call an attorney and say, what's the move? A personnel move, a student discipline move sometimes. We want to make sure we do the right thing for our students and our staff, and also it keeps us away from litigation.
Any questions? Fred?
And I know you had made reference to you hadn't heard from the towns, quote unquote.
Yep.
But knowing, at least on the Whitman side, where we're at, and the fact that they've gone to the steps to ask folks to take a 0, that the budget is heading for an override. And the way I look at it, at least in my mindset, is something similar to what we went through a few years back, where we had a budget that went on town hall floor, and then we had an override. And we had almost two budgets, so to speak. And if the override passed, then we would get our, I think it was 6% at the time that we were looking for. And if it didn't, we would have to make a decision as a committee whether to accept what they did from town hall floor or go for a reassessment. Do you envision taking a pencil sharpener, seeing whatever you can do to this budget that you've presented, and having level services or as close to level services, even if we're...
So this is level right now.
I
What
understand it's level service.
What I'd like the committee to do is look at what we need for our schools, listen to both town administrators about numbers of what they're looking at in their towns, and I've heard nothing, and I'm not trying to disrespect the two town administrators, but nothing has been put in front of this committee as far as where they're at. I've heard override. I haven't heard a number on a specific number of an override. So it's back and forth. And I'd like the committee to look at that and then say to us, look, this is what we think both towns can do. This is what you and George have to do, and sharpen your pencils. If we do have to make cuts, we'll look at district-wide administrative cuts, anything that will keep teachers in their positions and delivering the services. One thing I want to be very careful about is that our special education budget is up 2%. I can't do much about that. The other places are going to be cut district-wide in certain things. So I hear exactly what you're saying, and I'd like to hear from I'd like for this committee to hear from the towns before I tell my staff, or we're looking at cuts first. Right. Because I think Whitman and Hanson are in two different spots.
Yeah, and I'm basing my information on public meetings.
Correct.
What I see on TV, what I've attended for a public meeting, and sat there and listened to.
From the department head meeting, Mr. Lynham said he's looking at an override. A couple of department heads asked what the number might be, and we weren't given a number yet. And we are meeting next Tuesday at 10 as department heads again, and I'll be there. And I'll bring back to the committee on the 27th what I hear from the town of Whitman, and I'm sure Mr. Lynham will be here on the 27th, or Mr. McHugh as well, to say where they're at and what they can help the schools with in their budget. And I understand where Whitman is. We've talked for a couple months already, but now we're hitting to setting an assessment, and my partner here on the right keeps saying, you're the chief child advocate for the district. Yes, you'll have to make cuts if you need to make cuts, but this is a level service budget to provide the services we have in place, and I think we've been very creative in restructuring some of our units to make sure we can provide services to our kids in a different way than we provided last year. That includes math curriculum that we don't have in our district right now. That includes mental health support in our elementaries that we don't have right now. And that Mr. Cullity asked about special education. That's an area of need. I went into a building today and I spoke to a youngster who was crying his eyes out in the assistant principal's office because he was nervous. The school counselor was busy. The assistant principal was, I just happened to walk in. And I will say, we've had the opportunity, and we're different than the previous administration. We're in the buildings a lot. Our teachers are busting their butts with not a lot of supply. We were shocked coming into this office at what little we give our teachers to teach with. Our goal last year when we met with faculties was, especially at the elementary level, was to provide instructional materials for our teachers to teach with. Not the best, not the Cadillac, but we're trying to get them something in their hands. The amount of students that sometimes have to take a walk is much different than any of us were in school because they have to regroup a little bit. The amount of para support just to make sure that that classroom environment is stable for the other 24 students in the classroom is different from when we had, and we watch it. So I can tell you when I walk into Indian Head and the kids get to know who's the guy in the dark coat, they know who I am, which is pretty cool.
I'm the driver.
He's the driver.
I can't explain my job. I drive the car. I drive the car.
And I want the public, our teachers work really hard. I know, Fred, you mentioned our police and our fire work really hard. They do. My guys don't run into fire. My people don't run into fires. They don't carry guns, but they go into situations that are very difficult and managing 24, 25 kids and responding to emails and things, and the directives from DESE are up there. And what we want to do is provide them curriculum. You know, we've talked about what's the basic need for a teacher. How about something to teach with? We don't have that. You know, we're all over the place. We're trying to come up with a 5-year plan so it's not a shock to the budget in 5 years. We're trying to get cyclical. When I mentioned the instructional supplies at the high school, that's textbooks. That's this. We haven't added textbooks. A set of textbooks at the high school, and we're trying to get away from that, or licenses, is $25,000 for a course. And we provide $14,000 a year, or $7,000. So we are trying to catch up. So to say level services, that's what we're asking for. And if I have to take a pencil and erase, we'll do that. But that's going to be detracting from the services that we're providing now. And again, in a restructured way to give our teachers the support they need, our students the education they need, and so that we can move from, we talked about being in the middle. We don't want to be in the middle. We want to be a little bit better than the middle. And every year through this administration, we're going to try to push that forward. And as transparent as we can. And I'll give you the visual, the play-by-play of what we see all the time. Today at the Duval Fun Run was awesome. Our PTOs are raising money out of control to support things that isn't in our budget. So I saw the Duval Fun Run. We're jumping in the water for the polar plunge, the Conley basket auction, the pet. We're going to name the street out here to raise money for the high school. We're always raising money, and we still can't support the basic needs of our elementary school. So I'm going to get off my soapbox right now.
Ian? And then
Bob should be first.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, and just going back to your conversation about the override, what you're saying is that there's mention of an override, but appears to be no structure as how that's going to be. And here we are in mid-February, and town meeting's in about early May, is it? 6th.
May 6th.
So I'm hoping that there'll be some kind of structure. I remember what Fred was talking about, the town meeting went to, where if we got override, we got this X amount, if not, we got this amount, but didn't we do something on the town floor that night to kind of?
No, they had the two
They have the
budgets.
two budgets, okay.
Budget A,
So I'm a little disappointed that there's no structure, because I think it's important for us, and I agree with you, to hear what the town side, what their structure is going to look like as far as what the breakdown will be money. I mean, I don't want to put something in and get a chance and decide to go lower, and maybe we should have went higher, as far as the assessment goes, but I'm concerned that it doesn't seem to be a plan.
Yeah. And as I hear that, I'll bring that to you, that if we have more information on the next Tuesday, absolutely. But that's the piece. I'd be very, I don't want to do I don't want to reduce anything before I know what I need to reduce. That's not our job. That's what George said to you guys last week. That's the hard job that you guys have.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know the rest, but, you know, I don't think it's level services, it's more like same services.
Right.
Level services, we're below level, so
Right.
we should be at a better point for our kids. It's not gonna happen this year. And like with Bob and, you know, Fred, we're in catch-22. We have to decide things for Hanson and Whitman, but they're looking for us to give them numbers until we can get, you know, so you're in a catch-22, and every year it just goes like this, and then finally we, you know, just before the game starts, we come up with everything, and it shouldn't take that long to do something.
I do think that in the couple of 17 years I've been here now doing this, there have been different ways in which we have come to this point where where you have to decide what the assessment's going to be. In the last 9 or 10 years, it seems that we always presented something knowing that there'd be cuts, to then go back and cut before we knew what might be the number we might get.
Right.
So this time, we're trying to be straight with y'all. I mean, I'm trying to be honest with you, so we tried to present something that says, hey, let's come out of the gate and say where we're at. And so I think that's what we've tried to do. Now, I know it's a difficult situation. I know that there's been, you know, freeze talk, and there's been all this other talk, and there's been override talk. So that's where we're at right now, but to go back and cut before we know what is going on in an open meeting with two guys who just gave it to you straight, Sounds a little weird to me, but that's just me.
Fred?
Going, and all I have to work with is my previous experience with how we do budgets. And every year, we would get a budget presentation, and every year it would be, nobody can afford that. And every year, we'd cut down to what we needed for absolute, this is the bottom of the barrel, what we need. And we do our best, at least myself on a committee, you know, to back that, to try and see us to take steps forward.
Sure.
Never mind backwards.
Understood.
What, and this is just my thought process and the way my mind works. I know that the town's going for an override, and I know that just knowing the numbers of the town, they can't afford, you know, anything close to where we're at, especially without an override. And if we're going to be able to, and I don't want to use the word sell, but I guess it is sell, to allow people to make an informed decision of what they want, and I'm talking to residents and taxpayers, we need to be able to look them in the eye and say, this is what we need. Okay? We really can't survive without less than this. This is how we got to where we got. And if you have 5 minutes, let me sit down and we'll show you why we need these items and why we need what we need.
Right, and I guess I'd look to you then to say to this committee to say, what are the marching orders that you'd like for us to present? And I think when you say that, are you saying that 30 to 35 in an elementary classroom of students is acceptable?
No.
Are you saying that the loss of, potential loss of a student classes other than just academics is acceptable? Because I think that that's the that's I think where we're at. So if you tell us whatever you have to do, we're going to do it because that's your role and we know our role. But I think we need the guidance to say, what would you like us to look at or see or come up with so that we can move on from there?
And the dollars will end up being what they end up being. Sure. But I want to be able to, in my mind, be able to say, this is what we need, here's the justification. Sure. If it's, and not to paraphrase, if it's a $10 bill, it's a $10 bill. If it's a $100 bill, it's a $100 bill. But this is what we need. Knowing, you know, being fully aware that the ultimate vote will be from the taxpayers. All we can do is advocate and fight for what we feel is proper, but the ultimate vote will be from the taxpayers.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Bob.
To piggyback on what George said, I mean, I'm in full agreement that I would not want to have to increase class size. I would not want to have to cut PE, music, art, or any extracurricular activities. I think those are just as essential as the classroom. If you put too many kids in a classroom, then you might as well just chalk it up as somewhat of a wasted year, because that just becomes too difficult to teach it. So I think my priority would be to, like I said, maintain class size, maintain extracurricular. I'm a little disappointed. When I started in the school committee, I think I was concerned about Spanish, and here we are, so many years later, and I'm still concerned about Spanish. So it hasn't really been a big movement in that. Again, I feel frustrated in that we're always talking budgets, and we might have to cut instead of adding programs. It seems very easy to cut programs, very difficult to add programs. And I think every year we come to the budget process, I think that what disturbs me the most is that I don't think we're pushing forward. Or full day kindergarten would have been a plus. Adding as many extracurriculars as we can. Things like that, I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. Right. Instead, it feels like we're trying to hang on the best we can. And I felt that way for a long time now, and it's a little disappointing, but I don't know where we're going to get help as far as money goes.
That's a quick question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Overall, if you had to go the bad route here and you had 35 students in classrooms, does that mean we have to have more paras throughout? just to try to
Yeah.
assist somehow?
I can't even, I think, we'll have a stampede at that if I said
Yeah.
put 35 kids in a second grade classroom.
Yeah.
I know you might have people moving out of town or choicing out, okay? All our neighboring towns now are school choice, and they're not just high school. So if a parent hears that my child might be in a class, and I'm in a town that's looking at losing where I live, 5 elementary teachers, and class sizes might go up, my radar's up, because I have a 5th grader and a 4th and a 3rd grader. So if parents hear that, and it would be, if you want to have an experience, even 28 or 27, we might squeeze a high school class of 28. Okay, I taught a class of 33. It's doable. It's not awesome. But once you get into that elementary level, once you go over 24, you're really stretching it, especially with the social emotional needs of our students right now. I keep saying that. It's not just a buzzword. The need of our children is outweighing what we can support them with. We don't have many extra after-school activities, or maybe they're too flush in those, and when they come to school, it's harder. But their physical needs are different, and their learning styles are different, so our teachers are differentiating much, much more, and they're doing a nice job. Again, I'll go back to, they don't have a math program, really, and they don't have an English program or reading program, really. So our elementary teachers are doing this right now. That's a place that I would never want to teach, because that's not my skill set, and I see what they do, and it's very, very difficult. So yeah, if we went up, yeah, those things would be there.
I just wanted to throw that out because give people a realization there.
Thanks.
Mike?
Jeff, we voted for you for this position. You work for us.
Yes.
What you say we need, that's how we vote. Like, Frank Lyman doesn't tell you, us, anything, who and what we do. I just want to be clear on that. Like,
I appreciate that.
what you say is what we need. I don't know. I'm not an educator. That's not my thing. You say this is how many classrooms, this is how many people we need. That's how we vote. And I feel like we keep sitting back and going, oh, how many cutting this and that. That's not. You tell us what we do.
I appreciate that.
And that's how we'll do it.
And one of the things that I said early on is that I'm evaluated by 10 folks who do a formal, and then 4,000 kids and their parents. Well, take what they have, give it to you folks to make the choices. You direct us to where you want to go.
Is he meeting with our department heads? Is that true?
He met I was in a meeting, but he did meet with our association. Okay. Without my knowledge.
Yeah, that's wrong.
So,
I'm sorry,
but I wanted to be upfront with the committee.
No, I appreciate
Out of the
that.
conflict.
Mike, the charge of the school committee, the 10 of us, so everybody knows this, is to advocate for children.
Right.
Yeah.
We have 4,000 of them in this district. I think this committee would be reckless to start thinking about cutting a budget or adding class sizes till we get numbers.
Right.
In the 16 years I've been here, probably 12 of them, we've been fighting this battle, whether it's Whitman this year, Hanson next year, Whitman this year, Hanson. I'm not blaming either town. But our job here is to advocate for children. Whether it was previous administration, whether it's current administration. When they bring us the numbers, our job is to see how we can make it work.
Right.
Then, there's one more job, the voter, to tell us when they go to town meeting or the poll, what they want to see, just the same as they tell police, fire, what they want to see, and as a community, what they want to see for a school district. But we would be reckless if we cut everything and didn't tell them what's going on. It's their ultimate decision. It's their tax dollars. So our job is to present it as they present it, get as close as we can, and let it move forward. And especially where we don't have any numbers. And I don't think anyone is intentionally holding numbers. There's things going on in both communities that are very difficult. There's decisions that town administrators and unions and other groups have to make, and then we have to take it and try to sew it together and come up with something that's going to work for the district. But as far as what we go, the answer to your question is yes, we're here for students. We are here 100% for students. I think Fred was waiting, I think.
Sorry. And to go back, I'm not saying that we cut up a budget. I'm saying that the budget that we present is precisely what we need. And what you said a speak or two ago in response to Dan was very passionate, and it was from the heart and the head, and it showed the need of what you were speaking. And that's where I feel we need to be, to say, okay, this is what we need, this is why we need it, and then we'll see where chips fall. I'm not suggesting by any means that we turn around and cut up a budget and present something less than what we need. Okay, but what I'm saying is, we look over with a magnifying glass and just make sure that every single penny on here is exactly and only what we need.
And that's why I said, if that guidance person comes back, you're short there, if the insurance numbers come back, so those numbers might adjust, you know, as we go, and the issue is, we don't know that yet. So come March 1st, I might have some different numbers as well, once people decide they're retiring or they're not retiring, when I know my long-term leaves, medical leaves or maternity leaves are coming back or not coming back, so there might be some flux with that, so I appreciate that. But the way I interpret that a little bit was make sure you tell us what you need. I'm gonna tell you what you need all the time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that.
I'll pass.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Anyone else before Mr. Kane gets up?
Just when do we go ahead and decertify? What's the day of our certification?
45 days before.
45 days before the 6th of May. May 6th, I believe, is town meeting.
March 18th, this year.
I don't think it's May 6th.
Thank you, Sean Kane, 31 Forest Street.
That makes sense.
I just say, first of all, I appreciate the conviction and the determination of Mr. Farrow and Mr. Simonak. I think we need someone to champion this cause, and I think we need that. We need people with strong opinions that can move us forward and have a clear vision. Also, I think if you're going to ask people to sacrifice, I've said this before, I think it's important that you show them how you're going to sacrifice. You know, I agree with the words that Mr. Lynham said here last week. We don't want a self-fulfilling prophecy about a, you know, negative thoughts and feelings about an override. But I think there are definite things that we can do to present a successful override. To put it plainly, people don't want to pay for salaries in an override. I think if you create a vision and how we're going to save services, I think that's much better. So talking about some degree of sacrifice on your end, I think really is appropriate. But where I disagree with Mr. Lynham is, I think the chances of an override passing significantly increase if you have a clear strategic plan, if you have the clear budget document and financial policy and those sorts of things. And that's the logistical stuff that we can do, should do. The due diligence that if you're going to ask somebody to sacrifice, you want to say, listen, this is how we're sacrificing, and then specifically, this is what you're going to get for your sacrifice. And you do that, I think the chances of the override passing significantly increase. Also, I think it's important that we get people on board. It was nice of Mr. Cutler to be here last week, but if I remember correctly with that last override, he didn't publicly endorse the override. And it's little things like that, that if we have people in positions of power who are going to recognize the severity of our situation and then take the risk to say, hey, we really do need this investment. Those are the little things that I think are really going to put us over the edge, because obviously people are concerned. People have a hard time with their own personal finances. So it's really critical that we do everything possible to merge our convictions and our determinations with rolling our sleeves up and doing the hard work necessary to make sure people realize we've been thorough, we've done our due diligence, help us out, it's in the best interest of the kids.
Thank you. Fred?
I just want to respond to one thing as far as Mr. Cutler. And he represents Hanson, so I don't know what he perhaps endorsed or didn't endorse, but I would like to say that in every phone call I've ever made and every email, and as was evident, there are quite a few at times, he's always been there to try and do his absolute best for us.
Yeah, I've always got a good vibe from him. He always seems like an advocate.
Maybe no one asked him to endorse it. I don't know about, how Hanson works, but I just want to say that he has always been there to try and help our cause for our schools.
I could be wrong, but I don't think he publicly endorsed the override last time, and it's things like that that will make a difference. So.
Okay. I think I came into this meeting, and again, this is a committee of 10, I'm only one vote. I came into this meeting thinking about maybe we should start talking about E&D and where we're going and how we're gonna get there. And then after listening to the presentation with George and Jeff, and then knowing they're going to a meeting Tuesday that there's going to be numbers
I'm hoping. There's no-
set out.
Yeah.
I think that I would personally, I mean, you can make motions, I would personally like to see us hold off until another week or so.
I agree.
And see where we're at. And every year I know Bob starts about in September and says, let's get at this budget. One of the reasons that you can't get at it in September, truthfully, is because it gets closer and closer. We're waiting on the governor's budget. We're waiting on what's going on in Capitol Hill, waiting to see what the town's doing. We're all kind of in it together. So nobody's really procrastinating. It's the numbers get held up. And if you don't know where you are, you obviously can't figure out where you're going. It's like,
Can't forecast anything.
yeah, there's no forecast, there's no clear and direct passage for us to take. So that's just my opinion. I mean, I came in thinking we might start with the E&D, but what's your thought process? Do you want to wait?
No place.
Yeah, let's wait. Yeah, it's not a,
Go ahead,
excuse
Mr.
me,
Bush.
it's not a thing to just throw out there and say, well, maybe we should look at this. Appreciate the assessment schedule, what it reflects, gives you an idea, but you do need to bring all those eggs in the basket. And I said that this, when these two gentlemen came on board in their current capacity, that, you know, this opens a new light. This is a whole new thing. If we don't give them the due diligence, and Mr. Jones said it correctly, of letting them help us to help them lead, we're not doing them any favor, and their frustration could build. So they presented us really well with all these documents, as we've agreed, and not putting down any other administration, very well handed to us and given to us. And this is the truth, and we can work with it. Sean, thank you for mentioning services. That's a huge thing. That's all I've done all my life. Next Thursday, I'll be in the federal government for 25 years, and it's only been service, and that's what we do. And sometimes we don't use that word enough. You're right, we get entangled with, you know, just costs, just dollars. But we can present the dollars as how it affects our services and what we need for our services, and to continue that. I mean, level service is one term, but talking about them all, programs, services, and so forth, you hit it home there, so thank you.
I would think before we get it going on E&D, if we could have a real complete Munis report, that we can see what's been expended, what's available in all the lines, would be very, very helpful before we made any decision. And also, are we at a point where we want to look at this FY19 budget in any sort of a budget freeze?
Well, I think to answer, Christine, you want to address it, to answer the Munis
This is from
report, I mean,
Question?
Are we at the point of the FY19 budget that we want to address a budget freeze? I mean, anything more that we could allocate back, coming back from 19, knowing, you know, that it's going to go into E&D for next year would allow us, I don't know how the forecasting
I would
could
say
work.
no, not at this point.
We've
the numbers that
really
you-
already allocated,
This is from
The numbers you have in Munis right now are current.
yes.
Right, no, but I'm just talking, you know, the Munis report that shows you what's expended, what's available, or how much.
So you're looking
Shot of
at,
account
you're
rate.
looking at what we're probably gonna end up in E&D at the end of the year.
That's what I'm trying to,
Yeah.
you know, put on the Johnny Carson thinking cap, so to speak, or what was it, Karnak?
Karnak.
Well,
You're dating yourself, Mr.
as you know, Fred, as we took on Munis, we said every year Munis was going to squeeze it and
Squeezing
squeeze it and squeeze it and get to the point where E&D was going to get less and less and less and less. And as you can see, look at the figures.
We haven't been at $1 million
Historically,
for a while, so.
you know, we're at, I don't know what we're going to do, but I understand that with the forecasting of Munis, it has definitely taken out any of the guesswork that we've had to do. So
I would like to just motion that we don't set anything tonight, wait until we get figures. I mean,
everybody good with that? Joe?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike? Dan?
yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay.
Do-
Anyone-
One more thing. Christine, Ernie, and I did meet with somebody that was contracted from Whitman to talk about capital. Consultant from UMass Boston spoke with us the other day to help Whitman look at our capital plan for the next, from the high school, from the district, and from the town of Whitman. So we assisted that piece of it. It was a good meeting with them, so they're trying to put together a capital plan. Excuse me. They were impressed with our capital plan, although he did mention that we keep putting things off, keep pushing things off. And I did mention, and I will probably come to you on the 27th with looking at a statement of interest for a new Whitman Middle School down the road. Okay, so I'll put together a little proposal for you for a statement of interest. That doesn't mean we are going to do a statement of interest. It has to move forward. But we are having more and more facility issue at Whitman Middle, and it's something we talked about. So I'm going to leave it to the committee to see where we're at.
I thought we couldn't present that till next year because of the clawback.
I think we do the statement of interest now, but we wouldn't be doing the feasibility study till next year.
Oh, it'll be 2 years.
We have to get the statement of interest done. And then
But what happens if they tell us that if we get on the list this year?
I think, so we'd have to look at town meeting next year, and I'll look at the pieces
I
of
thought you
it.
had to show them that you had the funds available for
But-
the feasibility.
Correct, so it's a piece of the statement of interest first, and then you have to look at the feasibility study, so that would be voting in FY '20.
It's 2 to 3 years off.
Yeah, so it's just something we need to talk about, and Ernie will be here as well. But I do have growing concerns about the state of Whitman Middle School.
And the town, as a matter of fact, that did come up in the capital advisory or capital facilities and buildings on Monday. Just as a quick mention.
So again, and this is what I'm going to do at the end of the meeting. What are your expectations for us to be prepared for budget for you, to help you answer questions that we can put together? I saw you'd like an up-to-date munis
For this year's
expenditure
budget.
for FY19
Okay.
to see where we might end up with E&D at the end of this year projected. Okay. Anything else that we can help you make decisions with other than Whitman and Hanson numbers that you'll get outside? And if there's something that you'd like to see as we prepare, budget will be on the 27th, it'll be on in March as we go. But email me or email Michelle, call Michelle, and we can provide documents for the public meeting.
Okay, any other questions about it? Okay, dates to remember, February 18th through the 22nd is winter recess, there is no school. February 27th is a facility subcommittee here in the library at 6 p.m. before the school committee. February 27th, 2019, at 7 p.m., there is a school committee meeting. I didn't receive any requests to announce any fundraisers as Jeff hit on. There were quite a few fundraisers in the last few months. So,
Conley's probably looking for baskets,
yeah,
and
Yes.
I think you have Taste of Whitman coming up.
yeah.
We have a Division III MASC coming in March. It's on Chapter 70.
Yeah, they're talking about that.
Yeah,
I don't know
so-
what date it
I
is.
already signed up, I forgot the date, but just to let everybody know.
We'll announce that the 27th.
Yeah, because you got to sign up for that, so.
Yeah. There is an MASC meeting to talk about Chapter 70 funding, so anyone on this committee that is interested, contact
Boston
Michelle,
Cabin?
because you have to sign up
Boston
previous to
Cabin?
going to MASC meetings.
When's that meeting?
It's in March.
Okay,
Is that the one down in?
Oh,
I think it's 7. Yeah.
And I did sign an endorsement with 200 other superintendents for the governor to look at not Chapter 7, Circuit Breaker. Myself and Lauren Matheson are on a petition to the governor to look at Chapter 70 funding.
And actually, sort of honed down with the group that I'm involved with in identifying where we, as Whitman Hanson, could see the most increased funds. Regional transportation, if there would be something we could get the legislature to do about special ed transportation. I know that there are a couple of legislators that have that on their plate and that are interested in that. Circuit breaker, of course. I think those are the areas that we could look at to actually maybe make some gains.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Bob?
Fred, with that meeting that you go to, could you make it a point to fill us in each meeting so we know?
Yeah, and a lot of it is just in a chat.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I'd like to know what's, what that particular group is striving for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Facebook group. It supports Mass Regional Schools. A lot of them are out in the western part of the state, so they have sometimes a little bit different of an agenda than we do. There are some brilliant people involved that share incredible information. We...
Right, but I think it'd be important for us to know,
Yeah.
in other words, I spoke to this group and they were thinking this.
Yeah, and basically it's just everyone throwing things back and forth, but yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much what I do share.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to have
I have one more speaker before I entertain a motion to adjourn. Jill?
Hi, Jill Kane. I feel like if I leave here without saying something, I'm going to kick myself. The thought, I teach here, the thought of teaching next year with less is like, I don't even, it's so overwhelming. It's upsetting. It's disturbing. I can only speak for myself, but I don't know if it would help to get more teachers here and tell you guys what we do. Or, I mean, our days, the things we do, it's like we're the second moms to these children. And the social emotional piece, I teach at the preschool level. I've been there 10 years. I have never seen such, within the past few years, the social emotional needs in preschool. In preschool, we don't have a school counselor in preschool. We don't have, if we really, really need one, we could have access to one from another building. We don't have one designated to us. We have kids, you talk about early intervention, we have kids who come in who are kicked out of other preschools because they can't handle being in the preschool programs. So we test them. And we test, you can test OT, you can test PT, you can test speech. If they don't qualify because they're intelligent kids, because they have those skills, we can't take them because we don't have the means to take them. Yet they can't function in an outside preschool program because they don't have the social emotional capability to do so. So here we are looking at these kids saying, we know you need help, but you're not on an IEP. We're not demanded by the state to pay for your education. Sorry, there's the door. We're sending these kids home. So then what? So then they come back in kindergarten and they've been where? We don't know where they've been. Kicked out of another preschool. We have kids who come from foster home to foster home to foster home. They've had all kinds of trauma, but guess what? They passed the tests. They don't have a social emotional disability. They don't qualify. It's scary, and that's what you're seeing. So this is at 3 and 4, and at 3 and 4, you can control their behaviors to a point. When they're 5, when they're 6, when they're 7, now they're in kindergarten. Then they have to go to first grade and second grade. Those are the kids who end up outplaced. We can't support these kids who don't have support from 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. I sit here and I'm like literally shaking because this is our town and these are our kids and I want nothing more but to save them and help them. And I feel like I test those kids. I see them. I sit there and I think, yeah, you need to be here, but the numbers don't tell us that. And we have to send them home. And I look at their parents and I say, I'm sorry, we can't help you. You go figure it out. So I don't know what we need to do, but we need to do something because there's a lot of kids out there that need us.
Chris?
I just want to say thank you for that because I love the fact, Jeff, that you call yourself the chief advocate. Because I like that we're all advocates for the kids in our district. And being a first-year member on the committee, I got to be honest, so a lot of this comes at me and I'm just trying to keep my bearings. But when I hear a story like that, I guess my question is, what more can I do outside this room to advocate for our kids? Because I think our people in our community, when they hear these stories, it's going to influence their decision when they're voting for an override. So I'd just like to do whatever I could to advocate.
I mean, I don't know if it would help because, like I say, I'm speaking from just my level, but I know I have friends at every other level that feels the same way. So would it be helpful? Would it be powerful to have just teachers show up and tell their story? I don't know. I feel like we did that a few years ago and it didn't quite pan out the way we wanted. I I don't know what the answer is, but the thought of having less next year, it can't happen. It can't happen. I mean, I guess it can, but it's not going to be pretty.
Jill, maybe it's a thought, and I know Fred wants to speak next, and then I'm going to move on and talk why Mr. O'Brien left. If you see me looking at my phone, there's a major fire in Whitman.
Oh,
And that's
no.
why Mr. O'Brien left. He's the deputy fire chief in Hanson, and there's a 3 or 4 alarm fire in Whitman. And he was just texting me apologizing for leaving. So that's why Robbie left, because he pretty much stays. So I know that's nothing to do with school committee, but
Right.
I hope that everyone's
the
okay.
thought process I'm thinking as I'm sitting here, maybe for the next meeting or the meeting after that, and we'll talk to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, we couldn't hear those stories from 50 teachers or would be here overnight.
Right.
But if we could get a teacher from this group and a teacher from that group, and Beth's sitting right here and I can see the wheels spinning because she's shaking her head. She's either shaking her head at me thinking I'm nuts, which a lot of people have done that, or she's shaking her head agreeing. But if we could get some teachers from some different schools to tell their stories so people can see what physically goes on, because we sit here, we do this. A lot of us have been here for years, and the stories are heart-wrenching. So I'll talk with the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and maybe we could have like a special 45-minute discussion about that and really hear from them, because I think I'd like to hear that. I can only speak for me.
I think part of the problem is, too, you guys are hearing it, and maybe a few people who have their TV on at home, but it's not really... I feel like so many people say they want to help, and I don't think that they don't want to, but the time and they sort of go about their regular day-to-day, and they hear, oh yeah, the school's suffering, but they don't know how much the schools are suffering.
Mr. Small.
And the way I want to say this, for me, and I believe for everyone else here as you're preaching to the choir, okay, we don't want to see anything less. I mean, realistically, level services is not sufficient for what we need up here. Okay, but you have to choose your battles and choose what you can do. It's going to be up to folks that write the checks. We will advocate as hard as we can. Mobilize, okay, get together with teachers, make up some signs, put letters, write letters to the Express. Tracy will print them, okay? Get the word out as much as you can to advocate for the cause. I mean, we're going to present a budget, and at least I know in my heart myself, I can't see going backwards for what we're going to present. May not be what we end up with, and I just want to try and, be level-headed, but we're going to advocate and fight as hard as we can for that. At least I will. The additional help or the additional push to get up over the mountain, get as many people as you can. Get every teacher that you can. Get everyone mobilized. Get them out to the polls. Get them out to the vote. That's going to be the ultimate determination.
Yep. I don't know. I just felt like I needed to sort of let you guys know what we're dealing with, and the thought of doing it next year with less is tough thought.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe, and even to just before you walk away, the wheels are spinning here. I'm thinking maybe we'll have, depending on how this turns out financially, we could have a night in the Performing Arts Center to hear from parents, students, teachers, and keep that meeting targeted at this one informational night of what physically happens when the lights get clicked on from the morning till they get clicked off at the last bus return. That's a thought. Let me look at that as we move forward and we get the numbers, because I think it's relevant. Mr. Trotter?
I think a lot of people really underestimate what classroom teachers do from the time they enter to the time they leave and during the entire week. It's a very important profession. I think that you do an incredible amount of work. Things have changed. I understand as far as the different social, emotional needs that are in the classroom. You could have 3 or 4 kids on IEPs or 504, if there's any type of problem, and I agree, I don't think a lot of people really understand the amount of work that goes into teaching in the classroom.
But we love it. That's why we do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, I'll entertain one more speaker, and then we've got to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leila Donovan, 81 Old Mansion Lane. Again, I think everyone knows I'm a therapist in town. I have kids at the Conley School. And speaking about the social emotional needs of the kids, I see a lot of Whitman Hanson high school students who have been placed out of district. And it is not for serious social emotional issues. Some kids just need to go to a residential school, and those needs will never be met within the district. But a lot of the students that I see could and should be educated in this building, and they can't, and they're not happy to be at the Massasoit program or dropped out of school or 1,000 other places. And that's what's costing so much money. If there are counselors here to help them, a lot of my kiddos were told, take a lap. Their coping skill was take a lap around the school and calm down. Well, if they could do that, they would. It's not that simple. They need someone here in this building, not in another building across town, but there that they can talk to face to help them get back on track and get back to the classroom. We're here to educate the students, and when we don't support them, when we don't bolster them up to be able to sit in the classroom, we're doing them a disservice, and then we end up spending a ton of money sending them to other schools when that should not be necessary. If there's a counselor in this building, I can think of 5 kids off the top of my head right now that should be in this building, and they're not, simply because a social worker or any kind of therapist wasn't in the building available to them. And that's just me alone. I'm just one social worker, and that's 5 kids off the top of my head that I can think of. I think it would save a whole lot of money, like you said, Mr. Simonak, to have programs here in district that keep the kids here. And I see it from another perspective, so for what that's worth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone in the audience, and thank you to the committee and superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and always to Michelle. We never thank Michelle. She sits there and diligently does the minutes. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you.